Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's the Japan Zoomina at UC San Diego on May 30th, 2023 in California, which is May 31st in Japan. I'm Ulrike Schaede, professor of Japanese business at UC San Diego and the director of the Japan Forum for Innovation and Technology. This finds you at GPS, the School of Global Policy and Strategy. We are an international relations and public policy school here at UC San Diego, and one of our many degrees is a Master's of International Affairs with a Japan specialization. If you'd like to know more about us, please go to gps.ucsd.edu. And JFIT is our Japan Center, and you can find it at jfit.ucsd.edu. If you go there, it looks something like this. And there is a tab called Japan Zoominars, where you can find upcoming events and the JZ Gallery. The JZ Gallery has our recorded past events. Yes, that's right. This event is recorded. So today, what that means is you are invited to type any questions you may have into the Q&A box, and I will refer to you only by your first name if I read out your question. The JZ Gallery, by the way, looks like this, and today's event, of course, will be in the politics session. So you know that we have the Consul General of Japan in Los Angeles today with us, but let me just announce that after this, we will take a summer break, which I will spend around the world and writing a new book. So in the interim, feel free to look at our past recordings. All right, so our topic today is the Indo-Pacific, and I just wanted to warm you up just a tad. What are we actually talking about? And so I brought you a few maps. So the Indo-Pacific region is what you see here. It includes in the South, Australia, and then Southeast Asia. And then it, of course, goes all the way into the Indian Ocean. Here is a map of economic spheres. So there's the East-West Economic Corridor, the Southern Economic Corridor, and then we have, the Mombasa Northern Corridor, and of course the entire area around South Asia. There are also some very important key sea lanes that go through this region for international trade, which is part of the relevance of connecting the Pacific with the Indian Ocean. So, and FOIP, the Free and Open Indo-Pacific, is actually a brainchild of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and we're going to talk a lot about him today, as you'll hear momentarily as I introduce our guest. I just wanted to point this out because there are some people in the United States who think that this is an American concept, and that's just fine, but let's give credit where credit is due. It was actually Prime Minister Abe. So we're going to have a lot of four-letter or on average four-letter acronyms today. So let me just briefly alert you to what they are. So the Quad stands for the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which is something that was started in 2007 by Prime Minister Abe, and it includes Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. Then there's IPEF, IPEF, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which actually is something that President Biden started in 2022 on the tails of Japan's idea of the FOIP, which was dated 2016. Then, of course, you may have heard of APAC because that has been around a long time, since 1989, and includes 21 countries, and that's the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. And then there is the 5 letters TPP/CPTPP, which stands for Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. So this all started in 2016, and then the United States decided they didn't want to become a member of the TPP, in reaction to which Japan renamed the whole thing into CPTPP, and we're going to talk more about this. So enough of my PowerPoints. I just wanted to warm you up a little bit here. So let me introduce our guest here. Let me stop the share. And here he is. Hello, Consul. You're muted, Consul General. So it's time to unmute. Hello, Consul General Sone. It's wonderful.
Oh, Hello, good morning, good afternoon.
That's right. That's right.
Good
So let me
evening.
introduce you briefly. People have read your CV, but let me just point out. So Sone-san attended Jotsubashi University and graduated in law, I believe, in 1989. I will let on Sone-san that we were on the same campus at the same time, since we are actually, sort of Jotsubashi University alumni. Um, Sone-san also earned a degree from Wesleyan, and he joined MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in 1989, then earned another degree, has spent some time at the embassies in Geneva and, importantly for today, New Delhi. And he has several stints in the United States, including in economic affairs, about the OECD, U.S. and India. There was some work with the G20. He was an ambassador in charge of economic affairs. In Tokyo, and this Sone-san is important for our conversation today, in Tokyo, he served as Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Public Affairs, and Director of Global Communications at the Kante, there's the Prime Minister's office. And he was also Deputy Director General for Asia and Oceanian Affairs. Oceanian Affairs, I like that word. What this means, let me just translate this for people who are not so versed in how exactly the Japanese bureaucracy works. It means he spent a lot of time in the Prime Minister's office under Prime Minister Abe when all of these four-letter words that I just mentioned were crafted and structured. So Sone-san has been a major contributor to shaping those initiatives. And then since last year, September, he has become the Consul General of Japan in Los Angeles, which actually includes also in the territory the state of Arizona, and happily, the city of San Diego. We're so excited to have you as our Consul General in the region. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to join you. I'm very much looking forward to enjoying our conversation.
Thank you. So audience, you can type in some questions, but I want to start the conversation with Sone-san. And so let's go straight to the matter of today's topic, which is, what is FOIP and why would Prime Minister Abe and the Japanese government coin this concept and the phrase?
Well, I think the FOIP, or Free and Open Indo-Pacific, is the maybe the simplest ways to explain is this is a vision to achieve the peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region through maintaining and strengthening the free and open international order based on the rule of law. That is a sort of the very broader concept for the ideas we've been promoted. You mentioned that the FOIP was the first mentioned by the Prime Minister Abe in 2016. That was they called TICAD. I'm sorry, this is another acronym. It said Tokyo International Conference for African Development. It is the Japanese government initiative to promote African development. The name was Tokyo International Conference because it started in Tokyo in 1992 or 3 time. But in 2016, there was a summit meeting in Kenya, and the Prime Minister Abe mentioned about the free and open Indo-Pacific. It covers those oceans, I mean the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Oceans, so that it covers in African continent and toward the North and South American continent. So it's the broadest region. But I think to tell the truth, he already mentioned about this concept using the ocean back in 2007 when he was the Prime Minister for the first time, visiting India, and made a speech at the Indian Parliament entitled "The Conference of the Two Seas." So that in 2007, he already started thinking about the connecting to two oceans, Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean, as a sort of the new geopolitical concept to promote the prosperity and the stability As Ulrike-san mentioned, that those ocean is very important for sea lanes, for the economically as well as security reason. So that's why he started using the ocean as the concept to promoting the regional stability and prosperity. And the rather broader concept, it's just not really, it's not really a rigid idea that you have to meet these requirements. You cannot join the free and open Indo-Pacific. It's more the broad and it's inclusive openness, and then just bring everybody on board. That is the idea. As far as you are promoting the peace and stability and the following the international order based on the rule of law.
So that's great. You already answered the first question, because Perry was wondering, because New Zealand had fallen off the map there and was wondering whether New Zealand is not part of it. But of course, everybody who happens to be there is part of it, right? It's not a club. It's a concept. Yes,
concept. And it's also, even as nowadays, the European countries also thinking of this free and Indo-Pacific is a very important concept that they can promote. It's just even maybe can not only covering the Indo-Pacific region. It's the concept. It's the promoting the peace and prosperity through strengthening the free and open international order based on the rule of law. It can apply to everywhere in the world. So it's just keep up the people's mind and bring the people together to bring toward these to realizing this vision.
Great. You mentioned the sea lanes and so forth, but can I dig a little deeper on the India matter? So you spent a lot of time at the embassy in New Delhi when part of this was developed, right? And yeah. So why is India so important for Japan?
Well, I was in India between 2016 and 2019. And India is the world's largest democratic country. During my service in India, I watched the general election in India. It was so amazing to see that the more than the billions of people voting. They spend about more than a month to get the result. I think it's very important for India's as a democratic country, and it's the economically it's huge. The population maybe is already the largest, and then the good thing is that India is very much fond of Japan, and we have very good relations. And although the high end of the Indian economy, maybe it's just world leading person is coming India, working like in United States, but at the same time they are still in the underdeveloped. A lot of the poverty is still existing, so that Japan is trying to support further development of the India. And also important thing is that the India is need to be connected with the Southeast Asian countries. I visited a couple of times in Northeast Indian regions. It's still underdeveloped, but it is an important part that if we really connect those regions, Northeastern India, through the Myanmar and the some of the ASEAN countries, it will make more economic prosperity in this region. So that the one of the important aspect of the free and open Indo-Pacific is that the connectivity. So that while I was in India, I think the connectivity, enhancing connectivity physically as well as the human exchanges as well, is another important aspect that we can promote. And India was really happy to see that the announcement of Prime Minister Abe in 2016 for the FOIP, the Indo was mentioned in that the concept, and the India is an important part of this concept. So that there are huge excitement in Indian government and the people that this FOIP is going to be an important the vision that we can share with Indian people.
So Asia has always been, I mean, so just as a footnote, so I'm of course at GPS, but GPS used to be called IRPS, which stood for International Relations and Pacific Studies.
Mhm.
And we always also looked at India, and people pointed out to us that India is not in the Pacific Rim. It's not, so it's kind of in the South Asia is in this other part. And so what's happening here is that we're pulling that in.
Yes.
And so we changed our name, so we don't have to explain that anymore. Yes, we can do it. And so why is the Indian Ocean so important, other than for the sea lanes, which are of course critically important, but are there some economic considerations as well?
Well, it's for Japan, it's very important because it's connected to the Middle East countries. It's just bringing those oils and the products. And then also, while I was in India, under this FOIP concept, we've been trying to create some collaboration in India for the development of the African continent as well, because especially in the East coast areas in the African nations, they have many Indian diasporas. While I was in India, we have been really trying to collaborate with Indian government and the businesses. I don't know how it goes now, but I think it's another areas that through this FOIP concept, we can also work with the India toward the development of Africa as well. So that is another aspect that we can think about.
Definitely, yeah. So that all sounds very good, but can we talk a little bit about what's not so great? Which is, so what are the biggest, this is the title of our talk today, the biggest geodynamic forces in the region?
Well, maybe first, can I ask you what is this geodynamic really?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So, we have only so much space on these flyers when we do the Japan Zoominar, and geoeconomic and geopolitic was very long. And so I thought, okay, so I need a dynamic word that talks about geoeconomics and geopolitics. So I just went for the shortcut and said geodynamics. And my good colleague, Steph Haggard, looked at me a little bit and said, what do you mean by this? But basically it's the turmoil in the region, right? So there's a lot, and it's both economic and political. It's also social. So there's a lot going on in the region. So can you talk a little bit about, the unstable political relations and complicated economic situation?
Yes. Well, of course. We cannot avoid talking about China. When I joined the foreign ministry, our relation with Chinese, the China is still really a developing country. We have been supporting so much developing assistances, and we are supporting China to join the World Trade Organizations. But now that the Chinese, although it's still the development, need more development, but the economically, it's already huge. When I joined the foreign ministry, we are having so much trade friction with the United States because Japan has so much trade surpluses. But if you see the current the figures that the trade volume of the China with the various countries, including Japan and the United States, is so huge, so that the economic prosperity of the development in China is really big, and we have to work with various countries, including, we have to make the China to follow, abide by the international rules and laws, and including the economic laws. But recently, if you see this region, the China is continue and intensifying its unilateral attempts to change the status quo by forces in the East and South China Seas. And nowadays, Chinese also increasing their military activities around the Taiwan. Those are the way concerned in the current situations. We don't want. We would like to avoid any mishaps in this region. It really impacting the economy as well as in the security of this region. So I think we are really, always have a discussion with Chinese government and the people that we are trying to create the constructive and stable Japan-China relations, but we always make a case or the straightly mentioning about the responsibility we want China to play in this region.
So we have a question from the audience about this, so I want to bring it up, which is that, you know, in Europe, if you look back to Europe, the European Union started as an economic union. It used to be the EC, that's so many different, I can't even remember now. But eventually all of the European Economic Cooperation, European Economic Union, and then, you know, then now it's the EU. And so what started out as sort of an economic cooperation was also intended to create sort of a political unity against against Russia, I guess, and communism. So it had a political perspective and an economic perspective. Would something similar apply here?
Well, I think it's just, you know, we are rather see the more holistically. I think it's we cannot divide the economy and the politics. I mean, security, so that we are now talking about the economic security, like when we have the supply chains, how you can secure how the product will be produced with the collaboration of the various countries and without any stoppage of the supplies. I think we feel that the economy and security or politics, it's always coming together, so that we have to work in more comprehensively in these issues. We cannot separate. And then we are not creating any sort of the NATO type of the organization in this region. We are more like the bunch of different kind of the discussions or forums that can bring more prosperity and security and stability. That's what in this region, because it's so diverse in the difference in views in the developments of the development levels. So we cannot really do something like what European can do. So it's more like the dynamic and the more inclusive and openness and the diversity is really key in this region, I think.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. It's so there's so many different things that come together, which was different from Europe at the time. You just said something interesting that I hope my students heard. You know, I teach a class in Japanese business, and the students come and say, "I don't want to take your class. I'm only interested in politics."
Mm.
Yeah, I was like, that makes very little sense, because if you don't understand the economy, then you won't understand politics, and vice versa, right? So thank you for making that point, and I will tell them that you said that.
If you see the politics, it's always, especially when you come to the elections, it's eventually the economy matters. How those politicians really make your lives better or the prosperous. I think it's whatever the people eventually voting for, whether you are well off or worse off, is always a question when you talk about the politics.
Right, right, yeah. So, so I mentioned when I introduced you that you were an architect, contributing architect to many of these four-letter things, especially during your time at the Prime Minister's office. So, can you talk a little bit about how FOIP is connected to the Quad and the IPEF and APEC and the CPTPP? There's so many things, but they're all coming together somehow, right? So can you lay that out a little bit, how that becomes a thing, and why so many initiatives? That's the second question.
I think the important thing is, you know, of course, the vision is very important, but in order to make the vision to a reality, you need the concrete actions to be taken. I think let's say normally Japan is more focusing on those actions or implementation of the of the issue. I mean, for the program, the projects and things. But now we start having this vision of free and open Indo-Pacific. But also, we really need the real implementation of the actions and the measures and programs, so that the various forum. Of course, we don't have any. The forum can control everything in the FOIP. It's just all different kind of the activities or forums or the collaborations can contribute to the realization of FOIP. So they're like in the Quad, Japan, US, India, and the Australia. Those 4 countries is really key, playing a key role for implementing various project collaborations, including those the climate change issues or the infrastructure development and the health issues. I think the recent during the G7 summit, we also have the Quad summit meeting, and then we have been talking about various kinds of activities or the program we would like to collaborate. So I think the Quad is one aspect that we can promote those collaboration, and working with the various countries, including the ASEANs or the Pacific Island countries and others. And then which one next? The Free and Open Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, what was announced last year when the President Biden visited Japan in, I think in May last year, and announced this IPEF. I think it's another forum to promote free and open Indo-Pacific in terms of economic regions. I think there are 4 areas: the trade, although we are not talking about the tariff reductions, but the framework of the trade, and then the I think the supply chain, and the clean economy and the fair economy. Those are the 4 areas. I think that recently the U.S. hosted the during the APEC trade minister meeting in Detroit. They also have the IPEF ministerial meeting, and they have the general or substantial agreement or conclusion of the negotiation for the supply chain agreement. So there is some good progress making. So those are the action that we have been trying to achieve through those different kind of forums. And then APEC is the US is this year, hosting the summit meeting. It's toward the end of this year. So APEC is a rather longer history, although it's not really Indo-Pacific, it's just Asian Pacific Economic Cooperations, but this is maybe the one of the part of the collaboration areas. I think I was also involved in the APEC in 2016, 17, and there are so many different the aspects that the APEC is working on. But I think this year, US the chairmanship, I hope that we'll have a very good results at the summit meeting toward the end of this year.
Great. So thank you. And how does the United States fit into all of these initiatives? So and U.S. Japan relations. I mean, so the U.S. has been lukewarm on many of these, right? And so how does that come together?
Well, I think as I mentioned that this year U.S. is been hosting the APEC summit meeting. I think it's in November or December, November, in San Francisco. I think the U.S. commitment in this region, Indo-Pacific region, is really strong. I think, right after our announcement of the FOIP in 2016, I think U.S. is really on board for working together with making this vision for realizing these visions. One of the first steps that the U.S. took to change the name of the Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Command. I think that was a really quick and robust movement that the U.S. has been really committing this region. I think that's we have no doubt that the U.S. presence in this region and that will U.S. commitment. And but in order to make sure that the U.S. presence will be secured, and then we would like to work together with various other countries, including those Quad processes, or the APEC, or the IPAF. And I think the ASEAN is also hosting the various leaders meetings. I think through those various forums, I hope that the EU will continue to be a leading role. I think Japan is always with the United States to promote this US presence, and that is really beneficial and important in this region.
Yeah, so we have a few questions, including one from Jill about the US having become a little bit, shall we say, unreliable, because there's an election and then we go one way, or the United States goes one way, and then there's another election and it goes the other way. And is this something that Japan has just learned how to deal with, or what is the impact, Jill wonders, on the region of the fact that the United States is kind of flip-flopping?
I mean, of course, the election has some impact. The policies that the US having to deal, but I think the good thing is that now that our bilateral relation with Japan and the United States, no matter what the election will be, I think there's no doubt that our bilateral relation is strong and will continue to be this strong. As the Ambassador Mansfield mentioned, that the Japan-US relation is the most important international relation by now. So I think that the robustness of our relation is never changed. And then, well, in order to secure that relations, of course, we have to communicate with different people. Like in Congress, when I was in Washington, D.C., although I've been mostly dealing with economic issues, including Japan to join the TPP negotiations, we have been approaching the U.S. Congress and the people of the Congress. And I think in general, there is a bipartisan support for strengthening our bilateral relations. So from the aspect, I think we are always to communicate with our American colleagues to working together for this freedom and open Indo-Pacific. I think this having this concept of the free and open Indo-Pacific, I think it will bring the US together on this in this region.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, that would be great, right? And it seems to be the case, because they're on board. The U.S. claims that this is, their idea, which is wonderful, and so yeah, it's perfect. So we have a lot of questions though about possible conflict, because that's on everybody's mind, of course, right? So let me go down several of those questions. So the first is from Robbie, and Robbie wonders as follows. John Lewis Gaddis said that a successful grand strategy requires matching capabilities to aspirations, and vice versa, aspirations to capabilities. So the question is, are Japan's current capabilities sufficient to achieve its aspirations?
I think, in order to achieve more, to enhance the security and prosperity of this region. When you see those things happening in Ukraine, we understand that unless you are determined to defend your nations, it's almost impossible to get some support. I think Japan. I think the United States is the only allied country for Japan, and based on the security treaty. So our always rely on the U.S. support whenever happens, some country or something happened to Japan, the U.S. will come to defend and protect. But unless Japan really determined to take action by itself to protect or to defend my own nations, it's hard to get real support from even from the United States. That's why the Japanese government now decided to expanding our military budget to doubling, well, toward the 2% of GDP. I think this is just a big movement for Japan. It's in the past we have been always capping our defense budget under 1% of GDP, so that we decided to take some concrete actions to enhance our capability to protect or defend our own nations, and that will make our collaboration with the United States more robust. And that, of course, this is not just to fighting something. It's just creating more deterrence for what others, the surrounding countries or nations, to take some aggressive actions.
Yeah, and of course, we've learned in previous Zoominars that depending on how you count, Japan's military self-defense forces is now maybe the 4th or 5th largest in the world. So, thank you for that.
So we will continue to explore.
Yeah.
Also, then how you can spend those defense budget is also important aspect. Now we have been really thinking about what will be the best way, most efficient way to enhance our defense capability.
So you mentioned Africa, and John has an interesting question on Africa that I want to read out regarding the African nation that you mentioned on the other side of the Indian Ocean. My impression is that Japan, he says, they say that Japan lags behind the People's Republic of China, perhaps way behind, even by conservative measures. So my colleagues, Juan says, from Africa spoke some versions of Chinese before they learned Japanese. And there are various examples of this. So the question is, how can Japan overcome such big disadvantage vis-a-vis the People's Republic of China and winning over the Africans?
Yeah, well, we are not really, I mean, I don't, how can I say? It's not really the competition. I think whatever the really supporting the developing African nations, it can be a good thing. I mean, but sometimes it's those, we have been also talking about the sustainability of the development assistance, especially for the loans, whether those countries capable for repaying those loans, and whether we can really provide the good facilities or infrastructures. I think well, what we have been doing in Africa is to more, in a sense, focusing on the people, how the African countries, each country have their own the human resources to support their development. So we have been focusing on the technical assistance a lot. Of course, we have been supporting the infrastructure development of several projects, but maybe always the resources are limited. I don't know exact figures how much is Chinese doing right now, but the people also saying that just only providing the money is not enough. I mean, how the developing the people is really important. So the education or technical assistance, that corporations, is the one thing we have been trying to do. And also see how of course, we have been watching carefully about what the Chinese doing in that region, and to talk with those various countries. And the important thing that we are trying to give some alternative or options for those countries to take to get some assistance.
Great. Yeah. So we have two outright questions on conflict. So let me try them. Robert wonders, it is well known that China's Navy is already in position to cause major disruption to the Pacific Ocean international sea lanes. What is Chinese Navy's presence and potential for disrupting the sea lanes in the Indian Ocean? And the question continues, since Africa's east coast is on the Indian Ocean and China maintains military bases in that region, what's the potential for disruption? And then David has a similar question. What are the risk rewards of weaponized competition in the Indo-Pacific?
Well, it's hard to answer. I mean, it's just there's so many,
Variables, yeah.
And we cannot, well, of course, we have been thinking about the various scenarios, but maybe we cannot disclose all those details. But I think we have been very aware of what the Chinese military is coming, like in Djibouti. There is the China's presence in order to dealing with this situation in African continent. I think we also have our presence for the Djibouti and in some of the African continents as well. We have been watching very carefully, but well, I cannot tell any hypothetical. I cannot really answer any hypothetical question at this moment, but we've been very watch carefully what the Chinese presence in regions in not only the Pacific but also in the Indian Oceans.
Yeah, the hypotheticals are complicated, of course, but that's, we want to avoid any of these bad hypotheticals, I guess, is what this is all about.
I think we of course we have to developing our collaboration with various countries to make those unwanted incident happens, so that to make sure that we are ready to take whatever necessary actions, or first, as a diplomat, we have to create the atmosphere that we really can talk with each other and to avoid any misunderstanding and mishaps. That's what diplomat is supposed to do.
That's what diplomacy is all about. Yeah. So Jill is wondering whether you could embed this diplomacy in a slightly larger concept of there's also JICA, there's JBIC, I guess. So there are a lot of economic initiatives. There's the Japan Foundation with cultural exchange and study programs. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of this holistic approach that you mentioned earlier, right? That is about people. And what resonated with me that you were talking about people, but there's more than that. Aren't there also infrastructure programs and development programs and that sort of thing in the region?
What Japan is doing, you mean?
Yeah. Can you give us some examples?
Some examples. I mean, well, infrastructure development. I think one of the things I was doing when I was in India, the biggest project is the high-speed railway project between Ahmedabad and Mumbai. It's about 500 kilometers. It's almost like between Tokyo and Osaka, and there's the huge populations in that region, so that it will be a good opportunities. I mean, one of the infrastructures Japan is very strong is about the public transportations. In addition to the high-speed rail project underway, we are also working on the various metro projects in in India, as well as various Southeast Asian countries that will support the economic activities and the people's movement. And in addition, we have been also supporting like the port renovations and even the airport, so that I think one of the important aspects, as I mentioned, is the connectivity. So that our infrastructure projects, which can contribute to enhance the connectivity, is very important aspect, and that's the one area we've been trying to do more. And well, what else? And the people's the connectivity or the people's connectivities, how having more the exchange of the peoples. Well, we have several technical assistance projects providing some teaching those peoples. We are now start working on more kind of security related technical assistance, like we have several training program for the Coast Guard of the like the ASEAN countries. I think those are the things we have been really doing in a part of our development assistance.
So that's great. And going through the people level and education levels and infrastructure support strikes me as a really one of the strengths of Japan's approach in the region. We have two questions on the late Prime Minister Abe, who you of course work closely with. David wonders whether the Prime Minister Abe's main goal in creating FOIP was really, I mean, if we go to the core of, you know, what's the purpose here, to counterbalance China, and also that he had a special affinity for India. Is that true?
Well, I think he really likes India.
Okay.
I think, as I mentioned, that he, not in the personal level, it's for other, as a Japan as a country, the India, as I mentioned, is the largest democratic countries, and it normally has more like the policy of non-alliance, but I think we would like India to be a part of the countries been promoting democracy and the freedom and the openness. I think in that sense we are very much in a sense successful. And of course, they are tricky that the India is in traditionally have very strong relation with Russia in terms of the military capabilities. They have been procured so many Russian-related military equipments. So in that part, it's a little difficulties. But recent summit meeting, G7 summit, when the President of Ukraine came to Hiroshima and he had a summit meeting with India. I think that is another good movement for India to play an important role in this region. And well, it's the dealing with China is, as I mentioned, is really difficult. But I think, as I mentioned, we have to keep the communication line open with Chinese. We have a foreign minister's visit in China in early this year, and of course we have to make clear that what they have been doing, like in East China Sea or South China Sea, we cannot allow those things happening. I mean, for the unilateral actions attempt to change the status quo, we cannot accept. I mean, it's really related to the Japanese related to Japanese island as well. And also, we have been made clear that we are very much concerned about the human rights issues, like in Hong Kong and the Xinjiang regions. So we would like to make clear to those issues to Chinese, but we also would like to have possible collaborations when in the global issues like climate change. So that what we have been trying to have the constructive and stable relations that we are trying to achieve with Chinese, but it doesn't really mean to changing our positions. Our basic concept or the value will not change, and that part we would like to work with the various countries.
So Elif has a question about going forward on this. So Prime Minister Abe has his name basically all over any and all of these agreements, right? A lot. Well, he was in office for 12 years, so a lot happened in those 12 years, I guess. Elif recalls that in August 2022, Taniguchi-san, who was the speechwriter for Prime Minister Abe, stated that it's very important for Japan to follow the strategic direction that Prime Minister Abe set, and if only so as not to appear directionless when building out FOIP. So what is the plan going forward? I mean, can you talk a little bit about the presence and are goals shifting, or are they growing, or is basically the basic policy continued?
Well, I think that the basic policy continues. I think the current Prime Minister Kishida was the foreign minister and the Prime Minister Abe's administrations, and then like in the FOIP, it's also the Prime Minister Kishida also following. And recently, I think it's in March, we also announced the new plan of the FOIP. When Prime Minister Kishida visited India. So it's, that after we announced, the Prime Minister Abe announced the FOIP in 2016, the world is in rather unexpected directions going, and like what happening at COVID, and then seeing the situation in Ukraine. I think the Japanese government realized that the concept of FOIP may be more important now, so that I think the vision that the Prime Minister Abe put forward in the world is really an important asset for Japan to continue to promote and strengthening.
So we do have questions on North Korea, which is, of course, the news of the day, but also in the broader terms. How important, Perry wonders, is understanding the behavior of North Korea in the international arena? Mm-hmm. Also, whether that's its nuclear ballistic missiles development program, how important is all of that to fully understand the geodynamics of the Indo-Pacific region?
Yeah, I think this North Korean's action is really a serious concern for Japan and other countries like the Republic of Korea. And then we just would like to explaining those seriousness, especially when the North Korean launched the missiles. It's almost inevitably coming eventually, a possibility to come to the Japanese territory. They have several occasions they've been landed on the part of the Japanese exclusive economic zones, and it's just coming closer. And it's all really a threat, and then they have been also start thinking about having next nuclear tests. We have to communicate to North Koreans that we are determined to take any actions whenever it really happens. In that sense, our collaboration with the United States and the Republic of Korea is important. Now that thanks to the Prime President Yoon of the Republic of Korea, our relation with the Republic of Korea is dramatically improving. That will help our collaboration with the United States and South Korea is important for keeping the security in especially in Northeast regions. And of course, we would like to share those concerns with various countries in this region. Whatever happened, I think it's just, not really the region is just, if they really having the nuclear tests and nuclear missiles, then it's really impacting a lot in this region. So we have to share with concerns with various countries. And of course, in Japan, this adaptation issues is always important aspect that we always share with the various countries, that that issue has not been resolved. So, well, I've been posted in the Prime Minister's office, also in the Prime Minister Koizumi's time. So I visited North Korea. When he visited the North Korea second time, brought back some of the abductees' children. So I myself have sort of a little bit of personal attachment or interest in this situation in North Korea as well.
Yeah, that is such a difficult situation, and so unclear. I mean, uncertainty is the whole thing about this geodynamics concept, right? We just don't know. So I'm looking at the watch and I'm realizing, wow, it's almost time for, or it is time for concluding remarks. So I wanted to push you a little bit on, what are your biggest concerns and hopes? Let's start with the concerns and end on the happy note, hopefully, on hopes for the FOIP going forward. I mean, so what are you watching most closely? What could go wrong? And on the flip side, what would be like a super success? Since you're one of the people who's worked so hard on it, what would make you like super happy if you look back on this like in 10 years from now?
Okay, well, the first concerns, I mean, is as you're seeing those situation in Ukraine, the invasion by the Russia, the most concern is that we don't want to similar thing happen in the Indo-Pacific region. That is one of the real concerns that we have to watch carefully. And then my success, I think the person who've been involved in the Japan joined the TPP negotiation in Washington, D.C. My dream, hope is that the U.S. will bring coming back to the TPP. We already have the 11 countries already been almost effective. I mean, we are waiting for the Brunei to be ineffective in this TPP I think in July. So those 11 countries is going to be effective, and we already finished our negotiation or concluded our substantial negotiation with the UK. So, well, we want the US to coming back. If that happen, it's not that easy, I know, but we have been hoping that that will happen. That is my big dream or hope.
Can you say a little bit more on this latter part? So, what is the holdup for the US, and what would need to happen?
We want the US coming back to the negotiation. I mean, it's the original TPP is agreed based on the participation of the United States. But since the US withdrawn from the TPP, we have renegotiated with the countries. So with some of the original TPP aspect has not been materialized. It's just pending until US coming back. So if US coming back, then the whole original TPP will come into effect. But I don't know. I mean, you see, there are so many political difficulties. So we might also think about another way to make that happen. Or sometimes we might be negotiating some part. But I think eventually the importance of the TPP is not only the economic aspect, but also it's the one of the most comprehensive and the ambitious trade agreement have ever concluded. So I think that this is it will, if US coming back to the TPP, I think that will be a big message for the US commitment in this region.
Thank you. That is just great, and I hope that Americans will eventually see the light, that this is larger than what maybe some people say it is. And thank you so much, Consul General Sone. That was fantastic. I learned a lot. It's not my area of research, and so I always learn so much when I speak with you. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And audience, thank you for joining us today. As I mentioned at the beginning, I will take a summer break, and I will gather new thoughts and new guests, and we shall be back in September. Until then, everybody, please stay well and stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you all when we resume. So thank you, and with that, goodbye, and until next time. Thank you, Sane-san.
Thank you very much. See you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.